Welcome back to another episode of Flawless Plan Garage, where I have no idea what I'm saying in this video because I lost the audio, and so I'm doing voiceover much later, and I really have no idea what I was going to say. But what we're actually going to see in today's video is a breakdown of finishing up some of the important interior details in this truck, like putting a headliner in. Oh yeah, I forgot I already had the windshield out in this clip. By the way, you have to take the windshield out to replace the headliner in a crew cab pickup. That's a lot of fun. But I did that. Okay, how does this picture-in-picture thing work anyway? There we go. That seems better. Okay, so this clip, which obviously I once again have no audio for, is explaining really important details about how to cut out a windshield. Now, you might be asking yourself, why would you cut out your own windshield when obviously installing one is a job best left to professionals? Well, I had this fever dream that somehow I could reuse the windshield in the old truck, and I wanted to cut this one out without breaking it to prove that to myself. I was wrong. This Olfa knife thing is handy because it's sharp all the way down on the blade. That kind of worked. I did end up using that the most as I was cutting this out. The other tools, one I bought off Amazon, it's intended for cutting through windshield urethane adhesive. Man, it was like real, actual, honest-to-goodness work trying to cut that out. And I am not a fan of real, actual, honest-to-goodness work. It was very difficult, and I had a heck of a time with it. On the other hand, these little grabber doohickeys, which I also bought off of Amazon, those work great for just, kind of hoisting the windshield up and carrying it around, which I thought would be important to carry around a new windshield without breaking it. As it turned out, it really didn't matter because I realized quickly that there was no way that I had the skills to cut a windshield out of one of these trucks without completely destroying it, as well as destroying myself, the cleanliness of the interior, and a bunch of other things. But I did get it cut out so that I could get the headliner out, because that headliner, it was pretty bad. Look, it's another clip I don't have any audio for. No, I'm kidding. I have plenty of audio of this exciting clip, which involves me pulling out staples and then grinding away at the foamy, gluey mess on the back of the headliner. Don't worry, I'll save some for you. For what it's worth, if you're fixing your headliner, please don't use staples, because some guy like me is going to have to come in behind you and pull hundreds of staples out by hand pliers. And that is super annoying. Otherwise, I don't know, I'm sure there's better tools out there, but I use one of those nylon-y, abrasive-y, fingery things on the end of my corded drill as a way to grind that foamy, gluey mess off the back of the headliner board without actually damaging the board. That board's a little fragile. It's kind of like glorified cardboard, and it'd be pretty easy to damage, and then you'd be starting from scratch on this whole deal. So it took a while. It's pretty annoying, but it did work for me. It did the job. Now, when it comes to actually gluing the headliner down, I tried a couple of different methods. The first method I did was to spray the adhesive, fairly liberally on just the new foam portion of the headliner, not onto the board, and then wait for it to tack up really good. And then once it was really tacked up nicely, go in there and lay it in, stretch it into place, and you've pretty much got one shot. You can't really reposition it. But there's a little bit of wiggle room, a little bit of give in that method. And I was able to get that first half of the headliner down pretty well. Didn't really have any big issues with that. Then I had a little conversation with a friend of mine who used to do this professionally, and he said, boy, you really got to spray both sides. Spray it on the board and on the foam headliner, the new material. Let those tack up and then stick it down, because that's guaranteed never going to come off. Okay, cool. So I tried that on the second part. Let me be clear, I do not have the skills required for that method. There's even less forgiveness, and I did not get it right the first time in a couple of places, and there's a couple of wrinkles left in the final product. Is it perfect? No. Is it professional looking? No. Is it better than the headliner that was disgusting and falling down onto my head while I drove? Yes. I want to be very clear about that. It's definitely better. Hey, sooner or later we'll get to the point in this video where I figured out that I was using the microphone all wrong on this camera, but that point is not yet. But check out these old control arms. Look at that ball joint there. I drove home 600 miles on that ball joint. I'm grateful that at least the steering was, capable of a vaguely positive sense of direction. But these control arms were in terrible, terrible shape. The bushings were shot. The ball joints were shot, and just generally pretty crappy. The shock absorbers also on this truck were completely trashed, and it was obviously apparent anytime you drove the thing more than 10 feet. So it got brand new shock absorbers all the way around. I know it looks like I'm hanging the front suspension there by the ABS sensor wire, but don't worry, I replaced that ABS sensor wire later, so that makes it okay. It was a Chevy truck, which means it needed hubs. Also, I was going to demonstrate how bad these shock absorbers were, but that was the one shock that I couldn't, completely compress and flop over by hand. So what do you do when you need a set of decent control arms for a truck? You grab them off the parts truck. The ones on my previous truck were actually in pretty good shape. The ball joints were fine, bushings were fine, and they were a little crappy looking, but that can be fixed with black spray paint. Life in beautiful Nebraska, where one night it's 40 degrees and you're working along, things are going pretty well, and you decide to pack up for the evening. You leave all your tools out underneath the truck, obviously, and you come out in the morning and there's 2 inches of snow covering everything and it's 20 degrees colder. But you get the work done anyway. So here we are getting ready to install these minty fresh control arms that are rattle can-tastic, but really in pretty good shape overall. Put those on, and this was actually a pretty big upgrade in steering control and handling for this truck. Ooh, shiny. Yeah, I know. It does look pretty good. The hardest part about fixing something and painting something and making it look nice? Knowing when to stop. And I clearly do not know when to stop. So on a day when there was not snow on the ground, I went ahead and painted not only the control arms, but the frame and anything I could reach there under the front suspension. I actually painted the frame underneath the motor while that was out, and the whole front half of the frame that way while I had that part of the truck apart. And then I took the bed off for the third or fourth time and painted all the rails underneath the bed. And then the sides of the rails underneath the cab. Yeah, it may have been a little overkill, but I felt good about it. And just the joy of having a rust-free truck and then some rust prevention on future stuff feels pretty good. Okay, so for the exhaust, my goal was not to do anything really custom or special. I just wanted it to work. And in this case, the way the pipes come off the 8.1, obviously bolted right in, the manifolds and the front portion of the exhaust pipes and the cat on the one side, those bolted up in the same way and came right back to that same point under the cab in the truck. However, the pipes from those flanges back were significantly different because my donor truck, remember, is an extended cab long box, and this recipient truck is a crew cab regular box. So the front pipe section is the same, but the rest of it is different. So it was going to take some cutting for sure. Now here I did manage to get those pipes off of the old truck, which here in the Rust Belt is a minor miracle if you can manage that after any kind of age and mileage. The slip fit on the second exhaust pipe definitely took a lot of wrestling, but did come off. I went ahead and cut the muffler off, partly because it made removal much, much easier from the old truck, partly because that muffler already had a couple of holes in it. And I knew that one way or another, I was going to have to replace this muffler. But first, I really wanted to remove this clamp if I could, or at least get it loosened up so I could reassemble it better. And of course, the bolt is pretty well rusted together. And these clamps are kind of partly integrated onto that pipe, so they're not easy to replace and remove, at least from what I could tell. However, this wasn't anything that couldn't be solved with the liberal application of a wire wheel and a significant amount of heat, penetrating oil, and a little brute force. Managed to get that loosened up enough to get everything clamped back together. And of course, I didn't manage to get my booger welding on camera because it was at night and for a while in the freezing rain, but I managed to get the pipes cut short enough to fit the new muffler, a Flowmaster Big Block muffler that I was really happy with. Get it hung in the truck, and yes, that is a piece of rebar for when I ran out of hanger rod. Again, adjusted to a single outlet on the new muffler and then back into the stock tailpipe. Overall, other than my poor welding skills, I was happy with the way this came out. It all fit nicely, minimal cost, and sounded pretty decent. All right, that's it for this episode. Thanks for joining me. And look, now I have functioning audio. Also, the weather could be better for working outside. But hey, we're getting close to a real functional, honest-to-goodness truck made out of leftover parts. See you next time.